General Motors, Cisco, and multiple different companies are also still announcing layoffs. Hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Let's dig into it, y'all.
In the meantime, let's turn our attention over to General Motors. It's preparing as it prepares for its future. It came in. We did hear about the layoffs. Of course, we've had a lot to do with these the big three, right, and the hirings. It's my understanding a lot of the workers actually do make very handsome salaries. Let's ask Garrett Nelson, Vice President, Senior Equity Analyst at CFRA Research. That's one of the things you feel that they're, sort of picking the low-hanging fruit, tightening the belt. And some of these folks probably are paid a little too handsomely. Maybe they don't need them all, right?
Yeah, Nicole, I think that's right. I mean, you look at the layoffs that were announced, over 1,000 employees, but they're mainly in software development. So these are software engineers. They're not the assembly line workers, and so they're involved with, more development and not production of vehicles. And so we think, the announcement really represents low-hanging fruit. And a lot of automakers have been developing software in-house. And, we think it really makes more sense for a lot of automakers such as GM to really outsource that software development.
So what they're telling you is that white-collar workers are being laid off from General Motors. And see, nobody complains when it's really white-collar workers. They only complain when it's union members. I only see all of the videos, union members, all this plant downshifting. So Stellantis was laying off workers. Stellantis been cut their white-collar, a lot of their white-collar workers. And I think that they're preparing themselves to be sold. Not Stellantis themselves, but the Ford and the Dodge and the Chrysler divisions of Stellantis. I might go and buy me a Hellcat today. Let me go and look at my stock portfolio and see what's going on. But they have been laying off white-collar workers for the longest. GM has been downsizing. It's a lot of different companies and tech companies, major companies have been downsizing across the board. But nobody complains when white-collar workers get downsized. And it's not that the company is doing bad. Actually, General Motors is continuing to have blowout quarters and record profits. But when they have no use for you, either they merge with a different division or they adopt new software or they outsource a part of it. Then they say that, well, we don't necessarily need you in this team in order to develop proprietary software specifically for our customers. We're outsourcing a lot of this work to other companies that do it better than us because we're an auto manufacturer, not necessarily per se a technology company that develops software. And so you see a lot of these people get cut, including 1,000 jobs in software and services, which is one of the reasons why General Motors, which is headquartered here in Detroit, is actually downsizing their headquarters, and they're moving from the GM headquarters over into the new Hudson building over the next couple of years. And they're going to have a smaller footprint, but much bigger profits to continue to drive the company, which in turn actually is to shareholders' delight. Investors in the company says, yes, good management, Mary Barra, great job, continuing to trim the fat. We don't want to spend money where it's not due. But then other people that are not or do not understand the business side of it, and this is why their stock then popped, other people that don't understand the business side of it will say, oh my God, but this is American jobs. This is what the industry does. This is what happens. And nobody is ever going to feel sorry for white collar workers. The only people that they ever give any grace to are the people that's on the other side of the fence that's not white collar.
Any number of companies that are out there. And so
who won't buy a Hellcat today? Shit, you talking to the wrong one. You talking to the wrong one. We'll talk about that in a minute. Give me a second. Let me get to the rest of the segment.
I think that's really what was behind this announcement.
All of it sort of reminds me of the whole UAW strike. It was the longest strike, and they all kept coming to the bargaining table. And, why strike in the end to get higher pay and more benefits? Because in the end, y'all get laid off.
These are not junior jobs.
But, right? I mean, it's not necessarily going so great.
That's right. I mean, we saw the impact of the UAW strike last fall, and they end up paying much higher wages to those UAW workers. And so, what do the automakers choose to do? Is they choose to make some layoffs elsewhere. And so, we think we're going to see more of these types of announcements across the industry. especially from the big three, auto inventories are at their highest level in 4 years right now. And their comps are difficult. We're coming off of a big year of year-over-year sales growth in the U.S., where these companies earn the lion's share of their profits, and comps are much more difficult. Looking ahead out over the next few quarters, and so we do think you're going to see more of these types of announcements here.
Meaning that they're going to continue to trim the fat from American jobs, which is going to affect auto workers and it's going to affect a lot of different people in different industries. On the flip side, on a technology perspective, Cisco is also laying off more workers in their second round of layoffs.
Well, Lauren, what I could tell you is that these Cisco buildings here behind me can look a little bit different by this week's end, as Reuters and several other media outlets are reporting the tech company could be undergoing another round of large layoffs as soon as tomorrow. But the impact here in RTP tonight, if any, remains unclear. A big shakeup in the tech space. Giant Cisco is said to be going through another round of layoffs this week, its second so far this year. NC State economist Michael Walden says this is on par for the industry.
Many companies, Google's cut back, Microsoft's cut back, so this will not be unique for Cisco.
Reuters was the first to report the news, as Wednesday the company's CEO is set to address investors with info on its quarterly earnings.
The way I read it right now is it's not necessarily that Cisco is underperforming compared to the other tech companies, but they may feel as if they're underperforming compared to how they performed in the past and how the entire tech sector is performing right now.
Cisco sits as Durham County's fourth largest employer and North Carolina's 47th.
You know what's so funny? I was looking at an interview. I just pulled it up right now. I was looking at an interview from Cisco's CEO that said that they just having blowout quarters and they doing really, really well, but they have a lot of redundancy. And when they say redundancy, that means that we have multiple different people doing the same job. And we can actually have one worker, or we bought a company and we don't need all of that same department. We already got our own processes in place, but we wanted this segment of your business. And so what we did was we getting rid of all of those workers over there and we gonna merge your business into what we got going on. I was literally just looking at them, his CEO on CNBC, and he was talking about the fact that the company is doing well and the market is responding positively to their strategy, and they're actually doing really well as a company, but that does not disclude you from being laid off. What y'all have to understand is that when you're making these big dollars, no matter what segment of the company that you in, when you're a white collar worker, you're an at-will employee. I don't care what the offer is. I don't care what's going on. I don't care about seniority. You're an at-will employee. So at any point, at any time, which is one of the reasons why we try to run it up and make as much money as we can, and we also invest in ourselves, at any time, you could be losing your position and losing your job, regardless of how well the company is doing. The company does not have a downturn in order for them to let you go. It only has to make sense for the bottom line that ultimately appeases the shareholders, because upper management, and they don't just let people go that's valuable to the company, but if there's a redundancy and upper management sees that there's more value to be added into the company, then that's exactly what the decision is going to be, because it's business. It's not personal to them.
Chuck Robbins reported a good quarter and is optimistic for Cisco. We're going to have to touch on the layoffs, obviously, because a lot of people being laid off. But Chuck, I have to tell you, it's been a while since you just told me, you know what, the customers are buying. They need our stuff, and we're ready. And this was you at your most upbeat, Chuck.
Yeah, Jim, first of all, thanks for having me. It's good to see you guys. If you really step back and think about what's happened over the last 4 years, it's really hard to believe. But this past quarter is when we just exited the overall impact from the pandemic, the supply chain shock. We went through this phase where our customers, they were
look at how the market has responded.
Do
you see how the market responded to them? It was up 10% when they announced layoffs, and they decided to consolidate certain parts of their company, even though the profits is up. In shareholders' minds, and I can't wait to Stock Club. I love Stock Club. Stock Club is popping off in the Patreon. If you're not a part of the Patreon, link is in the description. Shareholders respond beautifully when they do layoffs that do not affect the overall business operations, but ultimately make the company leaner, faster, and quicker to respond to market conditions. You're absolutely going to be rewarded as a CEO, because it's not about American jobs. It's about how it is that you can continue to capitalize off of technology and make the company more efficient. That's how CEOs make their pay.
We finally got through it. I mean, it's really hard. We were talking about it yesterday, and it's hard to believe this thing's been going on for 4 years. But we said 2 or 3 quarters ago we thought that would end at the end of Q4, which it did. And, you know, it's
I look at Cisco as a possible play. We might have to invest in it. It might be too late at this point, but we'll see.
The order growth was great. We saw the demand return. We saw it across the board. And if you look at the last 2 years from a revenue perspective have been the 2 highest years of revenue we've had in the history of the company. So,
last 2 years from a revenue perspective, and this is straight out of the CEO's mouth. Chuck Robbins said the last 2 years from a revenue perspective is the biggest 2 years that we've had in the company's history. In the company's history. And they saying, listen, and we're going to still continue to lay off people because we got redundancies and what's going on inside of the company.
we had our best gross margins ever during the quarter. We had the highest sequential order growth from Q3 to Q4 we've seen in over 20 years, so it was pretty solid.
And the shareholders are rewarding it. The market is rewarding.
Chuck made a mistake buying Splunk. I happen to love CEO of Splunk. I happen to love what he's doing. And I said, I think this is one of the greatest acquisitions because security is really important. But more importantly, they were not able to get enough. They needed more scale. And you gave them
Cisco wasn't on my radar as a technology company at all. I got to admit
it is ahead, and you're right. A lot of the things that we bring to them, number one, is scale of customer reach. They were very concentrated in a certain set of customers. Geographically providing international reach, the partner community that we have that they really hadn't established. So we have all of those opportunities. And we saw during the quarter, we saw roughly 10 deals that we've now closed with the teams working together, and it's only 4 months in. So you got to remember, we didn't even expect to close this deal until September.
Right.
And we closed it in March early. So
shout out to Cisco, and then I hope all of the workers that got laid off, they learn a valuable lesson as a result of this. Somebody said, how can I become a bag chaser? The link is in the description to join the Patreon. Yeah, man. It's interesting. It's a tale of two worlds, depending on what side of the fence that you're looking on. But I've always said to myself, I want to be on the side of the winners, regardless of whether or not they're laying off, instead of the side of the losers. Let me read